Well, hello there everybody, and welcome back to another episode of an Ecologist Plays, where we are back in the Hunter, Call of the Wild. We are here in the African savanna, and we are making our way over to our adopted grandfather's tree of, what does he call it? Tree of knowledge? The tree of life. That's actually where we are heading. Okay, and that's about 1 kilometer away. That is quite a long walk for me. I am not very good at long distance walks, but we're going to try and get there safely. There is
our old friend, the pronking springbuck. Harvesting springbuck is a reliable way to feed local markets and prevent overgrazing, if you can catch them.
There's a male over there, and that's a female over there. Not sure whether they have the horns right or not. We'll check in a moment. I guess let's actually go and hunt South Africa's national animal to start the game off. Now, of course, since I am an ecologist, I'm not here just for the hunting. I am here for the description of what on earth is happening in nature over here. And we are going to just slowly try to make our way across. It does seem like we are downwind from them, so they shouldn't smell us, but we are really out in the open. So there's a very good chance that they are actually going to spot us rather than smell us. But we're going to slowly but surely make our way up to them. Of course, with it being, I think, middle of the day at the moment here. There, yeah, 10:30. So it's late morning for us. And with that, the animals in the savannah would be feeding early morning and then again in the late afternoon, especially if it is a hot, relatively sunny day like it clearly is here at the moment. So with the heat setting in, as it is currently doing, animals will be looking for shade. And in this case, the springbuck are going towards the tree that is over there. That is a typical acacia tree. I'm just going to check it out. Yeah, that's a typical umbrella thorn most likely. And under it, there would be some springbuck. So there's the male. He is quite calm at the moment. Okay, so there's the female. And you can kind of see she's got smaller horns than the male, which is right over there. You can see a little bit larger horns there. That's a typical male over there. And then this one, typical female. Very similar in appearance, but the horns of the male, like with the gemsbuck, which we had a look at yesterday, are a little bit more robust because it is used a little bit more in intra-specific competition. So with males fighting other males for access to the females. Now, the scientific name here is Antidorcas marsupialis. Marsupialis meaning pouched. But similar to the gemsbuck, the springbuck also here, the white belly with the black line, used to cool down and to keep cool, with the white belly reflecting a lot of sunlight and making it so that it doesn't heat up as much in a hot environment. And they do occur in very, very hot environments. In South Africa, you'll find them in the relatively desert environments as well, in the Karoo shrublands. And then also in places like the Kalahari, which is like a desert, arid savanna ecosystem, sand dunes and all that. Beautiful area, but you'll find herds and herds of springbuck there. And they are mostly mixed feeders. They're feeding mostly actually on things like forbs and little small herbaceous plants growing amongst the grasses. They're not true grazers as you would initially think. Now that one over there, just over 80 meters away, we can try sneaking up a little bit more, although we do have to be careful. I think maybe we should actually just take the shot. But there we do have a bit of pronking, and I think it has collapsed. The female is running. Are any of the others doing pronking? That's the question. I don't think any of the others did pronking. But as was mentioned a little bit earlier, so there's a warning call given by the springbuck. As was mentioned earlier, springbuck are important food source for people in the areas in which they do occur. They are relatively easy to hunt. They're relatively easy to also keep in an area because despite their name, springbuck meaning jumping goats, they're not very good jumpers. So vital organ was hit. I think that was a relatively good shot because it seems there is our springbuck. We managed to get about 10 meters and then no further. So this one, a typical male, quite a beautiful animal. Really, really a beautiful animal. We are going to just quickly bag this one as well. So this one apparently is a gold trophy rating. That's quite nice. So as I was mentioning, the springbuck is known as Antidorcas marsupialis, and marsupialis meaning pouched. And that's not because they've got a weird pouch at the bottom here. No. The springbuck have got a little section at the back here on the rump where there's a bunch of white hair, longer white hair. That kind of fits in, not truly in like a pouch, but it folds in. And then when they feel threatened and they do the so-called pronking, which is when they jump with their legs straightened, they will very often, and also when they're running away from predators, they will very often fluff up that white, the white hairs there. Almost as looks as though it's popping out of a pouch. And that's where the marsupialis actually comes from. But typical, the ribbed horns that they have, the nice strong horns, that's a typical male. The females will have much slender horns, as we saw a moment ago. Relatively good eyesight, and that's because they do occur in open areas, so they can spot predators a mile away. Let's just, for interest's sake, have a look. Okay, yeah, that was another long shot. So that one, really a quick, quite a quick kill. And that gives us, wow, $1,000. Wow, that's nice. We actually got more for this than for the golden wildebeest which we shot yesterday. Of course, there were quite a few of the springbuck together here. You do have them generally in mixed herds, so they would be together. Not necessarily very strict herds that stay together the whole time, but they will generally be found along with other individuals of the same species. Can also be in mixed feeding herds with things like gemsbuck and wildebeest, but in this case we just found the... oh, this looks like a carnivore's poop. Okay, yeah, that is side-striped jackal. But in this case we just had the 3 springbuck together. Just keeping an eye out here on tracks, so that was just a side-striped jackal. I think if we actually have a look here, we should be able to, yeah, we can to some extent see nails in the front of the paw print there. That indicates that it is probably a type of dog. So you can, there we go, right over there. You can kind of see in the tracks there, in the front, there are nail marks. With cats retracting their claws, they don't give those claw imprints in their tracks, but dogs will. We're going to be walking through a little bit more of an open area. It almost looks as though herds of buffalo came through this area, herds of buffalo and elephants. So we are going to need to keep an eye out on that. A lot of these plants do appear to be tambuti. It could be that they actually are more of the combretum species, which is a broad-leaved tree typical of the hilltops in the savanna. Generally in your poorer nutrient areas, the tops of hills, that's where you'll find things like your bush willow, your combretum, and it appears this is probably what we are looking at here. It's a very dense cluster of probably bush willow. Not a very highly palatable area, this it seems. It almost seems as though this is actually an exotic. This is a plant from Australia. It's the Australian blackwood. Oh my word. What on earth is the Australian blackwood? That was... oh, springbuck mating call. Okay. What on earth is the Australian blackwood doing over here? So I know it's Australian blackwood because you've got these weird bendy leaf-like structures here. But these are not actually the leaves. This is actually just the middle part of the leaf that has flattened to look like this. Is not a true leaf, but anyway. I also know this is blackwood based on these seeds over here. So you can see the dried seed pod kind of twirling around. Now some indigenous acacia species would also do that, but you also have that red part there, the aril. So you've got the seed, which is that black part there, and then that red part over there. And that red part is to attract birds to actually come and eat the seeds and then go disperse it. So they're not after the seeds per se, they're after that red aril. But in the process of getting it, they ingest the whole seed and then go and poop out the seed somewhere else, like in this cluster of trees over here, which resulted in that Australian blackwood, unfortunately, establishing over there. Now, if I were able to equip an axe and chop out some plants, I would be chopping out every single one of these Australian blackwood to get rid of them before they become a massive problem. Because the Australian blackwood, very similar to what tambuti, which is an indigenous species, can do. That's the warning call. I think, yeah, we have definitely been spotted. There was a springbuck over there. But as I was saying, the tambuti and the Australian blackwood can actually pop up new individuals from their roots. So they will send their main roots down. But, and there we go, there's the springbuck. Not really doing the pronking, it is just trying to run away. If it were being chased by a predator in a herd, it would most likely have done the actual pronking. Anyway, as I was saying, tambuti and the Australian blackwood, they will send their main roots down, and then they will have a whole bunch of side roots, and that will be relatively close to the surface of the soil. And then as it grows, it actually pops up new individuals, clones of itself, all along these roots, these lateral roots. And then as a result, they can actually form quite dense thickets as well, which is a problem if you're trying to get rid of things like the Australian blackwood in areas where they don't belong. But for things like tambuti, which can also do that, of course, there are always some indigenous animal that will be feeding on it, and that will keep it under control. And in the case of tambuti, there's a scrub here that apparently is fleeing. In the case of tambuti, that will be things like black rhino, which are able to eat it. Tambuti, however, is highly toxic to us as humans. One should not even make a fire with the dry wood of the tambuti tree, because that smoke also contains toxins. It will make you extremely nauseated, will make you vomit, and as far as I recall, it will, any meat you cook on that fire will become poisonous. So similar to what you have with oleander, which also is toxic in that way, so to the tambuti will also make you nauseous, make you vomit. Really, really a horrible thing to make a fire with. Do not ever try that. So if you're ever out in the African bush, do make sure that you know exactly what plant you are using for your cooking. But there is apparently the tree of life, and of course it is a baobab, Adansonia digitata. That is definitely one of my favorite trees.
You probably think I'm foolish with my traditional ways. Your brother thinks so. That's why you had to come back and help me. All your brother does is set up communication systems, set up all the cameras and the drones. Okay, he does a lot, but he doesn't hunt. And he doesn't believe in Iloko. I hope you are a little more open-minded.
Of course, the use of hunting in conservation will always be a controversial topic. And for this game, I am mainly going to be focusing on what on earth is happening in the reserve and what it looks like, what African savannas look like. Although, of course, like we had earlier, we are going to occasionally hunt something as well. But as I was saying, the baobab, definitely one of my favorite trees in the world. In Africa, oh, that was, I think, a blue wildebeest running over there somewhere. It's definitely spotted us. We're not moving quietly. The idea wasn't to go and hunt now. But at the beginning of this year, my wife and I and my dad, the three of us, were traveling in the northern parts of South Africa, and there were quite a lot of these amazing trees over there.
Here's my wishing tree. Of course, this is the first place I came to celebrate when I heard you were coming back to Africa. I played the drum and sang to praise the ancestors. Then I put something special inside the tree. It's there, waiting for you. Take it.
So these trees, the baobabs, are really amazing, as I've said, and they are considered by many to be the largest succulent plant in the world. There's a lot of water stored in this tree. Not that we can just go and hammer in and put a tap in and voila, we have water. But some people have hollowed out parts of the inside of the trunk, and then when it rains, that fills up, and they have then attached taps to that. So to some extent, you can use this as a water reservoir, but you need to hollow out a part of the tree first. Now, elephants love eating the bark of this tree, and you'll very often find, if there are elephants in an area where there are baobabs, entire sections of the bark will actually be removed. So the elephant will use its tusk to put a groove in there and then start ripping it, and they'll rip a large section of the bark of the tree off the tree. And in some cases, they can actually ring bark the entire tree. And for most animals, if it is ring barked, that tree will now die. Not for baobabs. They can actually recover. And it looks as though this one, you can see much smoother bark at the top there, much more raggedy at the bottom. I think this tree actually is showing that, where it is had been completely ring barked at some point, but it survived and it is still growing here. And they can be more than 1,000 years old, big ones like this. They are relatively slow growing, but they are surprisingly hardy as well.
Carved it myself. Do you recognize Nyami Nyami?
Ah, yes.
The Zambezi call him the river god. He brings his waters rushing, whoosh, searching for his lost wife. Maybe she was a lake goddess, I don't know. If we win his favor, Maybe he'll help us conquer the drought that's been sucking us dry.
So yes, Nyami Nyami. It almost kind of sounds like Nyami Nyami has decided to eat a few people.
Hunt a springbuck. Any will do, so long as you harvest it with the highest integrity while you have Nyami Nyami on you.
Okay.
Show gratitude to Nyami Nyami and the ancestors on behalf of your family and on behalf of the local family that this animal will feed. We never sacrifice animals for ritual alone. The local tribes donated their land to Vuronga Savanna because they rely on this ecosystem for their diet. We have a duty to them.
Okay, I think Grandad is done talking for now. So we are at the Adansonia digitata. There we go. So yeah, 1,000 to 1,500 years of age, and they are really quite awesome trees. Now, one of the myths is that when God gave animals plants to plant, he gave the hyena the Baobab tree, and then hyena being a hyena, and in the story at least not being very smart, although in real life they are surprisingly smart, but not being that smart, just put the tree upside down, roots standing up, and that's why the Baobab looks the way it does. So we have to go and hunt a springbuck. Now we have already done that today, but we are nonetheless still going to go and hunt another one, and there were actually some right up ahead here. Oh, there goes the springbuck, and that's pronking. You see that? Straight in the air, jumping with its legs straightened. That one is just waiting for us. I'm not sure whether I got him. I don't think I did. Oh dear. Okay, I did hit it. Which means we do need to try and get him again. Unfortunately, that one is now just hurt, but not fatally. It is now our duty to go and finish the job, so it doesn't suffer for too long. But the springbuck are a typical open savanna or open ecosystem animal. They wouldn't really go into the too dense areas. They are perfectly suited for life on the open plains, so we are going to hope that they did not in fact go into the dense bush. Doesn't seem like they did.
A few moments later.
Okay, it seems the springbuck did in fact come through the dense bush. We also have discovered some kind of rest zone.
One eternity later.
Unfortunately, I have lost the springbuck, and I don't think we'll be able to actually get it. It was not bleeding profusely though. There was a very low bleed rate. I don't think I really managed to get it at all, in all honesty. Thing is, in terms of the animal, it could possibly recover still, especially if I did not hit it at all in a vital area. It didn't seem to be slowed down at all. It can carry on walking for an extended period of time. The thing is, what I am worried about is potential lead poisoning. Not of the animal itself, but of things like vultures. There have been recent studies which have been done here in South Africa looking at poisoning of vultures through the ingestion of lead, where they were fed carcasses, not intentionally by humans to kill them, but they were fed carcasses at so-called vulture restaurants, where animals that had been shot, their innards were dumped there, the vultures would obviously come and eat it, and in the process they would ingest some lead. And that lead is leading to a whole bunch of toxic consequences there with them. And as a result, their population may really decrease quite a bit in the near future. But animals are quite resilient, and it is quite possible that the springbuck we unfortunately hit but not properly, that one will be able to recover. We have seen things like zebras with tails missing that the lions had tried to take out, and then the entire tail was missing. The zebra was bleeding profusely, and it was just carrying on as if, you know, that's life. But nonetheless, we are heading through a thicket here again. Different animals you would of course expect to find in thickets than in the open areas. Animals that prefer thickets would be things like buffalo, black rhino, those types of things. And elephants would actually open up this area quite a bit. I don't think, as far as I recall, he said the elephants were shot out in the reserve, so there are no elephants in here, only one rhino. I'm not sure whether we are even able to see a rhino, but anyway, the elephants, if there were elephants here, they would actually open up this landscape quite a bit. And I'm stuck in the thickets, there we go. And elephants are what we call ecosystem engineers, meaning that they have a massive impact on what the ecosystem, or the environment at least, looks like. So with the elephants gone, it's quite likely that, especially if fire is kept out of this ecosystem, it's quite likely that the thickets would actually encroach on these open areas. So you'll have a few seedlings like these establishing, and because there isn't fire to knock them back, they are going to grow big. They are going to provide cover for other seedlings to establish, and if you wait too long before you actually bring fire back, you are going to find that the entire area, or large areas, will in fact be covered by thickets like this. Now, I like the trees, I really do, but, and you'll see that as we head in again, if there are a few trees, then the grass sward, so the grass here, will do extremely well. Very nice grass, dense grass growing. If, however, there's an increase in trees beyond a certain threshold, what you'll find is that the grasses, they don't like the shade as much, and you'll have less and less grass actually growing in the dense thickets. So let's quickly have a look here. Out here, lots of grazing for animals. As soon as we head into the denser thickets, you'll find there are still some grasses, things like these grasses over here, which is probably buffalo grass. They do quite well. But you'll find these bare patches as well. The grasses need sunlight, too much shade, and they actually will start performing more poorly. So if you're looking at the savanna ecosystem, of course, some areas you'll have that are completely open, some areas you'll have that are extremely dense, and you'll have certain areas in between as well. And that is the way it should be. Oh, there's a road here. Well, that makes traveling a little bit easier. And a nice another lookout point for us. But the important thing is that when you're looking at the savanna landscape, you need some what we call heterogeneity, meaning some variation in the landscape. You can't just have open plains, and you can't just have dense thickets. You need some open areas, some dense thickets, some in between. Yeah, you really do need all of that. And that's going to yield the highest diversity within the landscape.
The savanna here in Vusha is the heart and soul of the reserve. This grassland sustains a cross-section of plants and wildlife, from the smallest birds to the harems of the pronking springbuck. Or at least, the grassland used to sustain them. Now there are so many springbuck, we may have to rename this area Springbuck City. I kid, but the problem is real. The savanna can't sustain Springbuck City. Fewer plants will thrive, the topsoil will erode, birds that nest in the vanishing shrubs will flee. And if we don't get relief from this drought, the smaller animals competing for grazing areas will die. On that, your codex has plenty of helpful information. But in Africa, the world is your classroom. Why only read about springbuck when you can see them for yourself? Find a male and a female, one of each, and spot them. Observe them.
Right, so, first of all, what he mentioned, a few things he mentioned. A whole bunch of females of the oryx in this area, interestingly enough. But what he mentioned there with the springbuck taking over to some extent, that is actually a big problem, especially on game reserves, because a lot of people think, oh, we need massive herds of springbuck. But what they'll do is, springbuck will breed very rapidly, and they will increase in number very quickly if you don't have a way of controlling them. And in a lot of these reserves, predators like jackals and caracals and lions and things like that have and are being shot out. So there's nothing naturally there to control their numbers, and they will increase to such an extent that they tend to take over quite quickly. Now what we have here are the gemsbuck, and they're not as much of a problem. They've got a slower reproductive rate compared to things like springbuck. We are going to have to go and spot a male and female springbuck. And some people in South Africa, for example, some of the ecologists that give landowners advice about which animals to put on their reserves, on their game farms, they are telling them, please do not put springbuck on. Because what people will very often also do is they will put too many springbuck onto a reserve. Because they believe that, you know what, there should be massive herds, so why shouldn't we have a few thousand springbuck in the area? And then you do have overgrazing, you've got a loss of your vegetation cover. As a result, you'll lose certain species, as he mentioned there. You'll lose your birds, for example, that are breeding in the tall grasses. The whole ecosystem will change, and you'll lose topsoil as well, and that we cannot have. So in the next episode, we will go springbuck hunting again. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining me on our little adventure in the African reserve here. Remember that the Hunter Call of the Wild is currently free on Epic Games up until Thursday. So you have got some time still to grab it on there. And if you've got any questions, do pop it down below. Hope you all stay safe. I will see you all again tomorrow for the third and final episode of the Hunter Call of the Wild. But then I may carry on playing it a little bit as we go on in time as well. But for now, thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Stay safe, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.